this, I'll get more. Oh yeah, I have more people.
The full screen.
All right, let me know when we're all set.
Yep, we are
Okay.
live.
All right, this is the August 2nd special meeting of Board of Investigation and Taxation. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Mayor Rilling,
Present.
Mr. Abrams, Ms. Brown,
Here.
Chairman Camacho,
Here.
Mr. Frere,
Here.
Mr. Jelleret,
Here.
Mr. Kasimis,
Here.
Mr. Abrams, not here.
I don't think so.
6 present, you have a quorum.
All right, so let's get right into it. Approval of the minutes is the first item on the agenda.
So moved. Troy.
Mr. Jelleret moved the item. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any corrections, addendums, deletions?
Yeah, I had one on page 4 under the Oak Hills Financial. Let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down. Said Mr. Frere said that part of the problem at Oak Hills was that Oak Hills was settled with debt. He suggested being careful. Part of that should be viability, not liability.
It should be what ability?
Viability, viability, not liability.
How are you spelling? How are you spelling it the way you want?
V as in Victor,
Oh,
V as in
viability.
Victor.
Viability. Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Instead of liability. And maintain viability of the golf course is the need to maintain and improve the property. And then at the last part, it said, it would be a shame to jeopardize their reputation because of the maintenance spending going down. Maintenance spending going down. On the last sentence.
Okay.
Okay, that's it.
All right. Is there anything else? All right. All in favor of approval of the minutes as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The motion carries and the minutes are approved. We don't have anything on the special appropriations section of this agenda. So the next item is the transfer agenda that's on page 7. And there appears to be, is it one item or two? One item,
One.
I believe.
I'll move for discussion.
Who moved it?
Me.
Okay, already moved it for discussion. Who would like to speak on the issue? It's a transfer from contingency of $41,791 to cover timing a difference between reimbursement revenue and the purchase of dash cams. Is there anyone here from the police department, or would anyone from the finance department like to speak on that?
This is
I'm
Angela.
actually here.
Yep, Mickey Dosimo is here. I'd just like to say beforehand that this will have no net effect on the bottom line for the city. Because they have to purchase these dash cams before the refunding comes in from the grant, we're transferring this from contingency to give them these funds, and then ultimately they'll get the reimbursement from the grant. So there's no net effect.
Okay. And the reimbursement will come directly to the city, I take it.
Yes, correct.
Okay. All right.
But does that, a quick question. So when we get that reimbursement, where does it go? Does it go back into the contingency?
No, it just falls to the bottom line at the end of the year. Like all revenues for all departments, they just fall to the bottom line. They don't go to that specific department.
That was my thought. So when we say it has no impact, it really does have an impact that it reduces our contingency. Is that correct?
Yes, it will reduce the contingency account.
But it'll reduce it until such time as whatever surpluses there are at the end of the year fall back into our, I guess, our rainy day fund. Is that right?
Yeah, correct. Like in October, I will bring to the BET all of the matching up the surpluses with deficits, and that will absorb the rest of the contingency. So yes, that's correct. It will ultimately, you won't need as much of the contingency account because you have this offsetting revenue.
But for now, the contingency is reduced. So my point here is though, are there other accounts that we could take the money from as opposed to the contingency? So we would still maintain our contingency.
I discussed that with the police department. I mean, these are unbudgeted funds, so there really isn't anywhere to find this amount. The account that it's coming out of, the budget in that account has been earmarked for other expenditures.
And at the end of the day, it's not going to affect anything, right? It's six of one, half dozen of the other, in a way, right?
Well, no, because you're reducing the contingency by $41,000. It's
But
not
at the end of the, fiscal year,
then
it's
it
not
just
gonna,
goes into, but
at
the
the end of the fiscal
reimbursement
year, it's
then,
not gonna matter because we're gonna get it back.
okay, I don't think that's the point, is it drops into the rainy day fund. It's coming out of contingency. Might as well take the contingency, put it right into the rainy day fund. If we needed that contingency somewhere else down the line, we wouldn't have it.
Well, we would have it in the rainy day fund, but the point is that it's at the end of the fiscal year, it's all going to even out, in theory, because we're gonna get that $41,791 back in the form of reimbursement, which will go to the city's account. So in other words, the city will get it back, and to the extent that there's a surplus, then that surplus then falls into our fund balance.
I think the point is, James, you make an excellent point. It's coming out of the contingency line item, which is for expenditures. We're not allowed to expend more than what's authorized unless we come back to you. All revenues go through the special revenue fund. And as Ed said, those revenue funds would drop to the rainy day fund. So realistically, if we got to the end of the year and the contingency fund somehow depleted, we could make a transfer so to enable those funds to be expended. We don't expect to have to need to do that.
Okay.
The only other alternative to purchase these dash cams would be to do a special appropriation to increase the cap that the Common Council originally set for this budget.
No, I understand that. I don't disagree with the purpose behind it. I just am a little concerned. I would have been concerned about depleting a contingency, because essentially that money does not go back into the contingency, and hopefully we would not need it before the end of the year when everything flushes through. So that's it. I mean, it's as Henry says, it's more an accounting allocation system.
I mean, an alternative would be for Mickey to look at the police budget and say, let's reduce a different line item. But
Exactly.
As Angela pointed out, this is unbudgeted, this is mandated, so we have to spend it. So we just thought this would be okay. We all understand, normally we would make Mickey do a transfer from a different expenditure line item. And it's just timing. But I think we'll be okay on this one.
So it's
Okay.
basically kind of like an unfunded mandate, but we've got a grant that's going to cover it, right?
Right.
Is it a grant that we get every year? Or is this a particular grant that we had applied for? Or is this something that we just, that's renewed every year or every 3 years or something? Just out of curiosity.
Mickey?
Is it a grant that we get every year that gets renewed every year or every 3 years or something?
I was calling on Mickey Docimo to answer.
I believe this is the first time it's not automatically renewed. I don't know that it won't be available in the future, but it's not
Okay.
an automatically renewed grant. We are applying for it. It went through
Right,
the law
okay.
department. We're hearing any day now.
Yeah, and I
Just
believe
curious. Thank you.
this is available because it is an unfunded mandate. And we will be purchasing the dash cams because the state law requires it now. So they're going to make the money available to the departments, but we have to front the money. And, you know, the $41,000 is a little bit hefty, perhaps, to have Mickey or somebody else in the police department try to find it in another part of the budget, because the budget in the police department is rather lean to begin with.
And just one last question. So this has been applied for, but it sounds on the one hand as if it's a guarantee that we're going to receive it, but on the other hand, you have to apply for it and we're still waiting to hear, so that is there a possibility that we might not get reimbursed?
The way it was explained to me, that's very slim, and the quicker we do apply for it, I guess the more likely we are to get it. There seems to be ample for everyone in the state, but it is first come, first serve, and we are definitely at the front of the line. So that's
Okay.
why we're so early in the year applying. We have every expectation to get it in the very near future and put everything back to where it rightfully belongs.
So it's a required expenditure that was not budgeted for, but it is required. We have to purchase the dash cams.
Exactly. And, you know, once again, as we always say, we budget a year and 3/4 ahead of time. So stuff like this comes up in our budget all the time.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Okay, has the item been moved? I think Artie moved the item. All in favor of the transfer of $41,791
Aye.
from contingency, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the motion carries and the item has been approved.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Sure. I believe that's the only other action item on the agenda. There are financial reports, specifically Oak Hills is the first one. Is there anyone here from Oak Hills, or did we receive an update last month and this month?
There's a
There's no
report
one.
in there.
Yeah, there was a report as
Give
well.
an update last month.
Yeah, okay. So an issue came up at the last meeting that I wanted to just raise again. There's we're paid, the city's reimbursed, and I guess we were reimbursed to the tune of $100,000 last fiscal year, which is, you know, for the money that Oak Hills owes, which is a fair amount of money. But there was an issue because of the yearly fees or the yearly passes or the seasonal passes that Oak Hills now has. I asked Mr. De Palma if how the per round fees are assessed in the case of a seasonal pass. Is it every time they play, it's a round, and so therefore we get $2 for that round? And I believe Mr. De Palma said that he didn't think that those counted as rounds. So
Sure
the
they do.
concern is that,
Yeah.
the concern is that you have seasonal passes that could amount to many, many, many rounds for which the city is not being paid the $2 per round that Oak Hills had agreed to pay as part of their repayment of the loan. And so I thought that we might have an answer to that question at this point, but it doesn't appear that we have an answer, at least in this packet. So I just asked Mr. De Palma to check that to see what arrangements or how each of those rounds can be accounted for in the case of a seasonal pass, so that we can get the $2 for that, for that round of play, even though that person may not be paying for that round specifically. So that's just an open question that, I mean, it could amount to, an insignificant sum, at $2 per round, but it could be, a few $1,000s that, could help to pay up that loan a lot faster.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It was $2 per round. It did not delineate between the seasonal passes or any other kinds of rounds. It was just $2 per round. And I think you're right, spot on, that every round that's played at Oak Hills should result in a $2 reimbursement to the city.
Yeah.
I
And
think we've
especially
been
when-
very fair. We've been very fair in trying to structure something that could help them become self-sustaining, but also pay back some of the debt service that they owe us.
Yeah, and I do note that, that their surpluses at the end of this fiscal year and last fiscal year were in excess of $500,000, whereas they would normally be in arrears, 200, or they would have to pay back the line of credit. So they didn't have to go into the line of credit, and they have at least $500,000 per year each year for the last couple of years of revenue over expenses. And so it seems to me that it might make sense for them to consider paying us at a quicker clip, since they now have this money, without jeopardizing the what they've done to make that to make Oak Hills a profitable endeavor for the first time.
I make the point, Steve. It would seem to me the reimbursement formula that was designated was on a cash basis. So I don't know what a round is, $50, $2 per round is 4% of the revenue. If that's the case, then maybe every time they sell a pass, we should just get 4% of that revenue, and then they don't have to pay per round, and it's on a cash basis. It's easier, it's cleaner, nobody has to keep track. And maybe we go back to how many passes did you sell? What's that percentage? That's what you should reimburse us. And going forward, I mean, it's just easier for accounting, and it's fair for everyone. It's a thought.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe next time, yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Ed, this is
Joe Light, yeah.
This is Troy. Yeah, you were absolutely spot on with what we talked about last month, and they said they were going to go back and check. You would have thought that they would have went and made sure that they priced the season passes. I bought it for $2,100. You would have thought they would have built in that concept of the $2 rounds, But I mean, I could play 1,000 rounds, and who knows? Did they factor that in? So yes, that's something that he said he was going to get back to us. And I think they sold 75 passes. I might be wrong. So,
I think he used that. Yeah, that's true. He did use that. Yeah, he did say 75, but he didn't know how many rounds each person played per season. So that was the math that needed to be done.
It's only the second year of the passes. I know Ed and I have a pass. I don't think Jim does, but yeah, I mean, obviously, and once you buy that pass, you're going to try to play as many rounds as you can to try to make the pass make sense, if you know what I mean. So,
okay, yeah, I mean, it's probably it's not a lot of money, but yes, Mr. Mayor.
No, I think Henry's answer is probably what we should be seeking. $2,100, 4% of that, whatever that calculates out to, that's what they should be giving us based on the structure that we've given them before, so that it calculates out to 4% per round based on a round that's been paid for on a daily basis. So I think that the easier way to handle this is just as Henry said.
Yeah.
Well, but we still have to find out. I mean, they do report how many rounds that they run through the mill. So, and I think what we have to do is understand, how do they calculate the payment that they give us? Because if they are calculating it based on the number of rounds, it's a very simple calculation. It's $2 times every one of the rounds. Because you'll notice in the financial statements, they do give you that statistic of how many rounds that they have. And that, let's expand that a little bit too, because there's also some free rounds that are given, gratuity rounds that are given. Where people have gotten given a free round for, I don't know, some reason. I can't think of one come to my mind right now. But what makes up those rounds that they put in that statistic? So
I think they do, Jim. I think they do some things with the high school, and I don't think they charge them. I don't think, but
right. So
Anyway,
I think that what we have to do is understand how that statistic, that metric that they have of how many rounds are played, what does that include? And that's key to it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right. So that was so maybe we can bring that up next time. it seems to me that when times were tough with them, the city worked with them to restructure their debt. And now that it appears that they're doing well, that we should look at that a bit more closely. Obviously, they're under no obligation to renegotiate their deal, but it seems to me, and there's no incentive to pay back the loan, which is effectively interest-free, any faster than they have to. But we certainly don't want to lose revenue because it's not being the monies or the rounds are not being accounted for because of these passes that no one really envisioned at the time that the loan was restructured, or that the new agreement was entered into in terms of how they would pay that back. So that was my only point.
And I agree with you, Ed. You're 100% right. But I think the key to it is to understand how they calculate the number of rounds. How do they calculate that payment to the city? That's the key to this whole thing. And then the other thing too is that I have to always go back to that, this is a very seasonal thing. Golf just got more popular when COVID came on the scene. We also have had good weather, not the rainy weather that we had a couple of years ago. So their fortunes could turn on a dime, and to find themselves not being able to meet any of their other obligations and sitting there with $250,000, $300,000 in borrowings that they had to do every year. So I think it would be good that they pay the city what they owe the city, but it might also be a good idea that they set up a little bit of a rainy day fund, that they can get to a certain level and they keep that and they use that to draw down and replenish and so forth on down. So we don't run into this problem sometime in the future where they get into trouble again.
Henry, I think you were going to say something.
No. Jim had the final comment and it was excellent.
All right. Well, so
I
we'll leave
didn't
it
mean
at
to
that.
take it away from you, Henry.
One other thing, Ed, I just want to
Yeah.
say, excuse me, this is Troy. The restaurant, we have not seen the restaurant open yet. I'm I'm just curious. They need to give us a date for that. And also we were talking about this. If you look on page 10, under balance sheet, the last part of that, the financial statements, capital improvements, it's clearly that some of the capital improvements we were paying for, it says restaurant equipment and construction. So I just want to bring that to everyone's attention. So looks like 94.
Didn't they also pay to the guys that were there before, the last concessionaires that were in there? Didn't we have to buy all the kitchen equipment from them?
I think there was some arrangement, but I don't recall the exact details. But what we did, the city has, it's listed that Oak Hills did do some improvements. I don't know what they say: irrigation system, new roof, that administration building, and restaurant equipment and construction. Maybe they could break out what those numbers are. Angela, if you could have Mike tell us what the breakout is for that 94,000 that was spent already.
Yeah,
It's
of course.
just to be clear, it's not the city, it's the
Oak Hills Authority. Yeah.
Right. All right. Is there anything else? All right. There a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye, it's adjourned. All right. All right. See you guys.
Good job, Ed.
Yeah. See you around.